A box plot is a way of displaying the data within a data set. Its best use is when you kind of compare two different data sets together using a box plot. You can compare them with each other. But for right now, we're going to start out by looking at how to draw a box plot. The first thing we need in putting together a box plot is often referred to as the 5-number summary of a data set. If you're given a data set, you ought to be able to find these things. The highest data point you have, the lowest data point you have, the median, which is right in the middle, and then the upper quartile is the median of the upper half of the data, and the lower quartile is the median of the lower half of the data. Once we have those 5 numbers, we can draw our box plot. We start out by having some kind of a scale, and I made mine go from 0 to 40 because I can see that my data points are between those numbers. And this won't be a hard one to make because 20 is halfway, and 30 is halfway, and 10 is halfway. So I've got a scale sort of to work from. It's just a starting point. When I draw this box plot, it may not be extremely precise. That's okay. The main idea is to show you how one of these gets drawn and how to read it. The box part of the box plot goes from the upper quartile to the lower quartile. So from 23 to 8. So if I kind of look at my graph and see where 23 would be and where 8 would be, the box on my box plot goes between those. And then we draw a line in at the median, which is going to be at 19. And a lot of times the formal name for this is called a box and whisker plot. The whiskers extend out to the highest and lowest of the data points. So 33 would be out there, and then 5 would be here. And there's my box plot. I've got my box plot for this data set drawn. You can label it. A lot of times that's done where you go ahead and put the numbers on your box plot so that it's easy to see what you mean. It's usually a good idea, especially if you weren't that precise the way I wasn't. And so then we've got the numbers on there describing it. Now here's one really important fact about box plots that sometimes students struggle with. It doesn't matter how big a section is. 25% of the data is in each little piece. Remember, 19 here is our median. That means that 50% of my data is to the right of that point. And because 23 is my upper quartile, that's the median of the upper half. That's the middle place in the upper half of my data. That means that 25% of my data in this data set is in that piece, and 25% of my data is out here on this whisker. Now you're thinking, how can that be? This is so much smaller than that is. Well, that just shows us the distance between the data points. It doesn't show us how densely packed they may be. And then likewise on the back half, 25% of my data is in that piece, and 25% of my data is in this tiny little slice right there. These points must be smashed pretty close together, and then these are going to be a little more spread out. But the exact same number of data points are between 5 and 8 as are between 8 and 19. 25% of the data is in each piece of my box plot. They're called quartiles. There are 4 quarts in a gallon. There are 4 quarters in a dollar. What we've done here is we've cut the data into 4 equally sized pieces. Not size with regard to the length of the piece, but size with regard to how many data points are in there.